So this is the brand new 2023 HP Victus 16. The last time I reviewed a Victus laptop was a few years ago, when I think my major complaint about that product at the time was that the display wasn't that color accurate. It didn't have a good color gamut. Now they fixed that, but they also priced this at $1449, which is much more expensive than the Acer Nitro 16 I reviewed, and it has very similar specs. Now I do like the look of this. Like, this is a good looking, more affordable gaming laptop. Yes, the build is entirely made of plastic, but it looks clean. Like, you could totally take this into a business environment and it would fit in perfectly. I like the logo, it's simple. You have the Victus wording at the bottom. There's text throughout the body. The top of the lid is a little bit flexy. Like, you push down on this, you can see some movement, but it's nothing to worry about. But the port situation is a bit different. Most laptops are starting to put ports on the back to keep it away from you. It just makes your desk look cleaner. HP Victus is still keeping it on the sides. For example, you have a RJ45 port on the left-hand side, USB-A port, and then you have your headphone jack. Now be careful with these things. Like, when you place your RJ45 cable inside of here, be very gentle when you open it because these things tend to break over time. On the right-hand side, you have your power connector. It is using a 230 watt power brick, HDMI port, 2 USB-A ports, and a Type-C port. This Type-C port does not support Thunderbolt 4. Now this is a 5.15 pound laptop, so it is lighter than the Acer Nitro 16, but I did find it very difficult to open it up with one hand. Like, the hinge on this is so tight that when you try to open it up, it makes it very difficult. You're gonna have to place your hand on the bottom to open up the lid. Now personally, I would rather this than a floppy lid, because the Omen 16 from a couple of years ago, its display was so wobbly. This is not too bad, right? Like, this hinge is very stiff. It does wobble a little bit when you open it up, but it feels stiff inside. The keyboard is super clean. It actually doesn't even look like a gaming keyboard. It looks like a nice productivity keyboard. It's a full-size keyboard, so you do get a numpad on the right-hand side. This little icon over here takes you into the Omen hub, which will allow you to customize certain settings. But in terms of RGB, it's one color, you know? Like, you could buy a more expensive model with more zones, but this specific model for $1449 only allows you to change it to one color. So if you want blue, you can do blue. If you want pink, you can do pink. Sticker placement is actually pretty good, not too bad. And the touchpad is also made out of plastic. Now, the problem with the touchpad is, you know, it's not the most accurate to use. You know, like, this is not a glass touchpad, and if you're using this for long periods of time, you're probably just gonna wanna connect a mouse. There's a little bit of distance when you're pressing down over here, which is not consistent, but it is what it is. You have vents at the top so air can go in. There's a little bit of keyboard flex in the middle, but I found typing on these keys to actually be quite good. You know, there's a very good amount of travel distance and they feel nice and clicky. But this display is one of my biggest issues with this laptop. Like, it's 1920 by 1080, so it's full HD, it's IPS. That's not the issue. My problem with it is that it's a 60 hertz display. They're selling a laptop that costs $1449 and sticking a 60 hertz panel on it. Now, I know you can argue that a lot of games are not even gonna go over 60 FPS if you're playing AAA titles, but a lot of people play older titles, optimized titles like Diablo 4, Overwatch, the list goes on. And those games are way more than capable of getting over 150 frames per second with an RTX 4050. I just can't believe they stuck a 60 hertz display on this. Now, the color accuracy is fine, the color gamut is good, the screen brightness is very average, but, you know, again, refresh rate is the biggest issue here. Webcam at the top, it is 1080p, and there is a little switch if you want to disable it, but, you know, it's good enough if you're making a Zoom call or if you plan on streaming with this laptop. Now, specs on this are a bit better in some ways than the Acer Nitro 16. For example, you do get a better CPU. This is using an i7-13700H CPU paired with an NVIDIA RTX 4050. This 4050 runs up to 120 watts, but based on my testing, I couldn't get it to boost past 100 watts, so it's being power throttled completely. You do have 16 gigabytes of RAM, obviously the 16-inch Full HD display, and of course it comes with a 512GB NVMe SSD. Look, CPU performance on this is really good. It's using an i7 processor. In terms of single core speeds, it performs maybe a little lower than some of the competition, but the multi-core speeds are very, very fast. If you're buying this for content creation as well, you'll be very pleased. It performs exactly where it should. In fact, it traded blows with the Acer Nitro 16 in a lot of tests, but because it has a slightly better CPU, it surpassed it on others. If you're buying this strictly for gaming, which I imagine most of you will, it performs exactly where it should be. Now remember, the Acer Nitro 16 has a 1920 by 1200 display. This is 1920 by 1080. So even though in some of these games the FPS is slightly lower on the Nitro 16, if I performed them both at 1080p, the Nitro 16 would have been on par, or if not slightly faster by a few frames than this laptop. It performs exactly how it should. I don't have any complaints about the performance. But if you're buying this for low fan noise, it's okay. Like if you put this on performance mode, it's gonna hit 60 decibels, but of course you can tweak the settings to get it below 50. Obviously, this does have a mux switch. If you go into the Omen software, you can switch it back and forth between hybrid and discrete GPU, but it does require a restart. Temperatures are actually really good on this laptop. The keyboard never gets too hot, always very comfortable to use when I'm gaming throughout the entire day. The CPU temps are right in line. They never get super hot. In fact, I think HP's being a bit conservative with the CPU temps. I feel like they could have went a little bit hotter, because when you check out the core clock speeds, the average core clock speeds, they're very low, like lower than the Acer Nitro 16, and that's using a Ryzen 5 CPU. So I feel like there's a little bit of room for improvement with the thermals. So two speakers on the bottom of the laptop, they don't sound that great. You know, there's no bass, there's no mid-range, it's all treble, and it just doesn't get that loud. Now the internals look really good. You do have a lot of copper going back and forth to keep the CPU and GPU cool. You do have upgradable RAM capable of being upgraded to 64 gigabytes. You do have a very fast NVMe SSD, but the weird thing is there's not a second slot. Usually with 16-inch chunky, more affordable gaming laptops, you usually get 2 slots, but this one is only giving you 1. Swappable Wi-Fi 6E card, but you do have a big 83 watt-hour battery, and I actually got really good battery life on this, which is surprising considering it's using a more beefy i7 processor. So here's the thing, this laptop is lighter than the Acer Nitro 16. It has a slightly better processor, better battery life, but it fails in the price point. $1449 for a more affordable gaming laptop with an RTX 4050 is way too high, especially when you pair it with a 60 Hertz display. Come on guys, this is a gaming laptop. We don't use 60 Hertz displays on gaming laptops priced at $1,500. That feels like highway robbery. Now granted, if this laptop was priced at $999, this would be a completely different story. But as of right now, it's just priced way too high. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.